Guys, it's Jason from Prodogz Dog Training. Happy Thursday afternoon. I hope you're having the best day of your life. Hey, so today it's a video vlog is from Ashley. Ashley in Phoenix asked a question. She says, how do I get my dog to come to me on a regular basis? This is a little bit of a complex question just to answer over a video chat or a video vlog. But I'm going to do my best to kind of address it and address some key points to why a dog doesn't come to us. So there's a couple different reasons why dogs don't come to us when we're called. It kind of seems like when our dogs are puppies, they follow us around, and for the first probably 3 or 4 months, the puppy won't leave our side, and all you got to do is say their name or say puppy, and the dog comes running, and voila. And then it seems to be anywhere between 4 to 6 months, the puppy starts getting more confident about being alone, being by itself, and starts being adventurous and wants to go sniff around and go on its little ventures. And then we try to call the dog, and the dog doesn't come. So the moment, or the very first time we call the dog, and the dog chooses not to come to us, we're losing ground in our training. We're basically untraining the dog in retrospect. And so let's say at that very moment you go and you get some cookies or you get some treats and you coax the dog to come to you, and the dog comes to you and you reward the dog. Okay, so then next time you call the dog, I almost guarantee you the dog makes a choice. The dog says, hey, wait a minute. The first 3 or 4 months of my life you called me and I really didn't get a reward and I came to you. And then the other day you called me, I didn't come to you, but then you went and got this value, this high value. I came to you and I got rewarded. So then the dog starts making choices. The dog says, okay, hey, wait a minute. I noticed you didn't go inside and get a value. I don't see a cookie in your tree or in your hound, and yeah, I'm not going to come to you. So then what do? You go get a cookie or your treat or a high value, and the dog says, hey, I'll come to you this time. And so then maybe a couple days later, the same day, depending on, how many times you're working on this with your dog's out and about, you call the dog, and the dog says, hey, wait a minute, I know how this works. If I don't come to you until I see you have a cookie, then I'm going to make the choice not to come to you. And what's happening is you're changing the dynamics of the way the dog thinks about training. The dog's saying, hey, I'm going to perform for you, but I want to see that enforcer. I want to see that reward. Now, that does not mean that you should not use a reward. In fact, the reward helps us condition or teach the behavior. However, it's how we use that, when we use that, and the type of reward we use that really teaches the muscle memory. So one of the first steps I would usually encourage people to do is never put the dog in a situation where it's going to fail. In other words, if your family's going on a vacation to the beach and at home in your backyard or at home in your neutral environment, out of 10 times you call the dog, maybe only 6 or 7 times it follows through, and this is in your neutral environment. In other words, your backyard or somewhere the dog is used to. Most likely, if you bring the dog to a non-neutral environment, in other words, a neutral environment that the dog is not used to, there's a lot going on, the chance of your dog coming to you, honestly, is probably 20 to 30% if you are lucky. So stop and think before you put your dog in that situation. A failing situation is, what's the chance of my dog coming? How often does my dog come? And how quick does my dog come when I am in that neutral environment? Okay, and if like I explained it before, if the percentage is not very high, then most likely it's not going to come to you. So what can we do to change the odds in our favor? One, of course, as we just talked about, don't put the dog in a situation where it's going to fail. The more failures you have, the more basically the more the dog learns that it doesn't have to make the choice to come to you. A lot of times what we do is, if you want to give your dog some freedom, and if you want to let your dog, romp around a little bit, but you're still kind of working on the recall, or you don't really have a solid recall, I would suggest getting a long line. And you can get a long line from any pet store, or a lot of times we use a horse lunge line. And it's basically a leash that is, 30, 40 feet long, depending on how long you want to get it. One little key note when you're working with a long line is a little bit of mechanics and science here. So a dog can reach its terminal velocity. That's the not really terminal velocity, but it's maximum speed of running ability in a very short distance. In other words, let's say a horse, it takes at least 10 yards to 15 yards before it reaches the max speed it can run. So the max speed, I don't know exactly what a horse is going to run, but let's say the max speed a horse can run is 40 miles an hour. So it takes the horse, let's say, 10 yards to reach 40 miles an hour. Where a dog, the average dog, depending on breed, depending on weight, all these little factors, but the average dog can run anywhere between 25 and 32 miles an hour. In fact, I think a whippet or a greyhound, I think those can run 32 to 35 miles per hour. So the average dog is probably anywhere between, let's say 25 and 30. The dog can gain its maximum speed in a very short distance. In other words, probably an amount of 10 to 15 feet, the dog can reach that speed. So if you're working with your dog on a long line and your dog just takes off, it can reach a very high velocity in a very short amount of distance. So if you have a 30-foot leash on your dog and it all of a sudden sees a dog, it's going to take off. And of course, if you're holding the end of the leash and it gets up to 30 miles an hour, all that weight and all that energy is going to be transferred directly to your arm or however you're holding the leash. And so you got to make sure when you work with a long line, you're being safe and you keep in mind what's around you, and you don't take a chance of really hurting yourself. I've seen some videos and some photos of people that have really seriously got injured because of this incident, just exactly what I explained to you. So keeping safe and keeping this in mind, a long line can be a really great tool because, one, it can give you the freedom of letting your dog be away from you, play a little bit, have that freedom without being on a 6 or 8 foot leash. And it also gives you an opportunity to work on your dog's recall with your dog a little ways away from you. So that's the first, let's say, equipment that I would suggest when working on the recall to kind of get is that long line. So beyond that, high value is really important too. So let's talk about values for a minute. If you are if you're in your backyard and your dog just has its regular toys and regular things to play with, most likely if you have, let's say, some kibble or some hard dog treats or something really simple for your dog, most likely your dog is probably going to be interested in it because the environment it's in is not there's just not a whole lot going on. It's a conducive environment for learning. However, if you take that dog to, let's say, the lake, or you take that dog to the beach and there's a bunch of things going on, most likely those hard treats or its kibble is not going to be very enticing to the dog. The dog's going to start making choices. The dog's going to say, wait a minute, I really like chasing the seagulls, or I really like jumping and swimming in the water, and the treat you have is not that enticing. So it's always a balance when you are in a non-neutral environment. We have to balance out the type of rewards we use because we want to encourage the dog to want to come to us. We want to give the dog a reason to make that positive choice. So long line, high value treats are really the main equipment you want to use. Whether you do this on a flat collar or whether you do this on a prong collar, I usually don't recommend working on a long line with a prong collar, just because, once again, the dog can build up a bunch of energy, and with a prong collar it can hurt the dog, or a choker chain. So whether you use a flat collar, whether you use a harness, the kind of collar, in my opinion, in this situation doesn't matter. So one of the things I encourage people to do is basically do a puppy recall game. And this is one of the things that we teach in my basic obedience class, is how to teach your dog how to come to you using this game. So you have one person that holds on to the dog, the other person shows the dog reward and runs away. At the same time they're running away, they're encouraging the dog with lots of verbal cues, whether it be puppy, whether it be the dog's name. You really want that dog really exuberant, okay? The moment the person lets go of the dog, most likely the dog is just going to beeline it right to you. The moment the dog runs to you, boom, you reward the dog, you feed the dog, and you feed the dog like maybe a bunch of treats, not just one or two, but maybe like a good handful of treats. And then you hold the dog, the other person comes up, shows the dog the reward, they take off, okay? Now remember, you're only taking off the length of your leash, because what would happen if you had the dog and the other person was 50 feet away and the dog took off running, and then halfway to the other person, the dog says, nope, I'm gonna go visit that dog over there, or I'm gonna take off that direction. Well, once again, we're putting your dog in a losing situation, or a failing situation. So you really want to make sure that the person's only going the distance of the long line. So let's say you're playing this game and the dog does decide to beeline it some other direction, okay? How you use the long line is really up to you. Whether you just block the dog or stop the dog from going to whatever it's wanting to go, or whether you say, hey, you know what, my dog really knows to come to me, and you need to give a little bit of a negative marker with the leash. But most of the time we just want to stop the dog from going to whatever it's trying to go to, and teach the dog that the only option the dog has is coming directly to you. So once you play this game a bunch of times and the dog starts understanding, hey, if I run to the person, then you can start putting a marker word to it, or the command to it. You guys would call it command to it. So then you'd start saying come, and you'd run away, and the moment you're at the end of the leash, the other person lets the dog go. So now the dog is learning, wait a minute, every time I hear the word come, boom, if I run to the other person, I get this high value reward. So, of course, this sounds really easy in theory and on this video, but if you do play this game and you're consistent playing this game, what you're going to start doing is you're going to start building a muscle memory. And so one of the things I tell people a lot of times, before you put a marker word to it, in other words, before you put a command to a behavior, make sure the dog is offering you the correct behavior. So if you do this recall game 10 times, and out of 10 times, your dog comes to you 8 times, really slow, kind of meandering, with really no speed and emphasis, most likely this is the speed that your dog is always going to come to you. So you really, really want to make sure that before you put a marker word to it, the dog is offering you the consistency and the speed that you want. Because if it's not, it's going to learn come means I can just meander and walk to you. So anyways, hey, quick video on this. I know this is really only touching a little bit on the recall, give you guys some ideas, kind of, some games to play. If you're interested in learning more, I'd love to have you participate in one of my classes. I do have basic obedience classes that go every 4 weeks. They are every Monday from 6 to 7 p.m. All you got to do is give me a call if you want to discuss more. My phone number is 541-608-2857, or you can simply just go to my website, and which is www.engageyourdog.com. There is an application link on there. You can make your application, you can fill out your application, make your entry fee there, and then once I receive your application and your entry fee, I will then reserve you a spot and add you to the class. So thanks again for tuning in.